Welcome to another episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse, where we explore the intersection of faith, family, and mental health.
Today, we have a deeply impactful episode that delves into the topic that affects many families, but is often shrouded in silence and stigma: postpartum depression.
I'm Natty,
I'm Vita,
and
and
we
we're
are
here
here
to
to
thrive.
thrive. Imagine welcoming a new life into the world, only to find yourself sinking into the darkness you never expected. Postpartum depression affects 1 in 7 women, and today we're shedding light into this critical issue with someone who has walked that path and emerged stronger.
Our guest today is Amber Hoopengarner, a life coach, mental health advocate, and mother of four. After battling postpartum depression herself, she turned her pain into purpose. Amber's new book, Three Parts of Healing, All Parts Whole, is a beacon of hope for many. Amber, welcome to Thrive by the Rising Muse.
Oh, thank you, ladies. And that wonderful introduction was so beautiful. You guys are amazing. Thank you. I'm truly honored to be here with you today.
Well, we only told the truth. I mean,
Mhm.
this the information we got. So
That's who you are.
you are awesome.
Let's start talking about your journey. Can you tell us about your experience with postpartum depression after having your kids and what were the most challenging moments that you faced?
Absolutely. So I began when I was 21. I had my first son, and I was a single mom. His father and I were friends, but not together. It was rough. And so I had him, and I brought him home, and everything was good. I was experiencing the baby blues, but then it shifted, and I realized quickly that something was not right. I started having thoughts of hurting him, of like I would be walking up the steps and I would just envision myself tossing him out the window, or I would be bathing him and I would vision myself drowning him. And I got heartbroken, because I didn't want to hurt him. I loved him,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how to overcome it. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it wasn't right. And so I went and spoke with a friend of mine that I worked with at the time, and I knew she had been through something similar. And she said, "Yeah, you should probably go to the doctors." And so I did, and the doctor prescribed me Prozac, and I started taking it, but it just didn't do anything for me. It made me very tired. And then not when my son was one. See, when he was one, I was 7 months pregnant. My first two are only 13 months apart, so they're very close. So I got postpartum with the second one as well, and postpartum OCD, and that's where the intrusive thoughts come from. And I remember one night specifically, I woke up in the middle of the night, and my first thought was, "Oh my gosh, I hope I didn't choke them with the belt." And so I went and I checked on them, and they were okay, but that didn't work. The Prozac didn't work, and I had to stop taking it because I was pregnant. And then I went back to the doctors, and they put me on Zoloft, and Zoloft made me feel kind of like outer body. Like I would move my hand, and there would be three hands behind me. It didn't work. And I remember holding my second son, and I was feeding him a bottle. Specifically, I remember feeding him a bottle, and I was dozing off trying to feed him. And I looked down, and he's like looking at me like, are you gonna feed me or what, Mom?" And so I had to quit taking it. So I ended up self-medicating with marijuana for quite a while, and it ended up leading us to homelessness. I had to go live at the shelter with the two kids because I couldn't work to pay the rent. And so after about a month of being at a shelter, we ultimately went and stayed with my mom and her husband at the time. And then I met my husband, my ex-husband, and we had our third son, my third one. And yeah, it wasn't as bad, but I remember specifically one night or one day walking over a bridge, and something said, "Throw him in." and he was 2, and he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, throw me in there."
Mhm.
And I knew in that moment that God was, he was with me, and I had always been a believer. I didn't necessarily always live for God. When I had my first
Mhm.
2, they were out of wedlock to 2 different men. So I wasn't necessarily living for him, but I had a foundation of
Mhm.
Jesus. And it was in those hardest times that I cried out to Jesus.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
remember, hearing a woman on TV, and she spoke about her story, and I don't think there was even a name for it, or at least if there was, she didn't say it, but she described my experience, and I knew that that was God letting me know that I wasn't alone in this. And so after my third son and that experience, I became more open to the idea of counseling, because I wasn't raised in a home that promoted
Mhm.
counseling. We were very, what happens in this house stays in this
Stays in the
house.
house.
You don't tell your business. It's not for everybody. And so therapy at that time wasn't even something that I had
Mhm.
considered. And I think, especially as brown and minority people, brown and black skinned people, I don't remember anybody at the doctor's office ever saying anything about it to me. Now that I look back on it, I don't remember them ever saying, "Hey, have you considered talking to anybody?"
Mhm.
Mhm.
And at the same time, though, I do remember them asking, "Did are you thinking about harming the baby? Are you thinking about harming yourself?" And of course, I said no,
Mhm.
because I don't want them to take my kids.
Right.
So it was very hard. It was like being in a cave and just not knowing if I was going to be able to come out, how I was going to get out. But I knew God was there,
Mhm.
and I think that made the difference.
Yeah.
It definitely made a difference, especially speaking through your baby.
Mhm.
Absolutely,
Yes,
yes.
yes. How did your experience with postpartum depression influence you to be a life coach and a mental health advocate?
So it definitely solidified the passion that I had for mental health. I remember at 15, I wanted to be a child counselor, because I've known that there's mental health issues within my family. And so I really wanted to advocate for kids. I didn't want to have my own, but I wanted to help other people's.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And of course, I did have my own later, and I loved them to death. And but yeah, so then after going through postpartum, it definitely solidified even more that I wanted to work with women and children who were experiencing, the mental diagnosis and life coaching. So to be honest, so I have a life coaching certification,
Mhm.
but I don't have necessarily a life coaching practice.
Mhm.
So I haven't it hasn't been something that has been fruitful in the way of working. It's more of like I speak about it, I write about it. I did some volunteer work with Postpartum Support International and connected women to resources and things like that. I've talked to friends who've gone through different stuff. So in that way, that's the life coaching piece. But for the mental health advocacy, I work with the postpartum. I work with kids. I'm on another podcast where we discuss mental health and how it affects our communities. And just I have some certificates that I got through Light University for counseling, for working with kids with ADHD. I have one for working with women that I'm working on now. They have a bunch. So I have
Mhm.
certificates from Postpartum Support International. I got a bibliotherapy
Mhm.
certificate. So because I've always loved reading and I love writing, and
Mhm.
so with therapy you can bring books and therapy together, which I think is the coolest thing. Like I
Yes.
was excited when I heard about that. I was like, ah! So I got that, and I've done studies in that. So it's really an all around encompassing, and then of course the faith aspect.
Mhm.
Don't want to leave out God in any way.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
We know
I'm
you have
sorry.
a project.
Was that a long?
No, no, no. That was
That was a very
perfect.
long answer.
That was perfect. That was perfect. We know you have a project in the works titled Prayer, Progress, and Deliverance LLC.
Yes.
Tell us
So,
about it. What is it about? What inspired you to create this project?
So it is indeed a project in the works. I'm working on, getting funding and getting it off the ground. And the name of it, Prayers, Progress, Deliverance, is actually the name of the first book that I wrote for postpartum.
Mhm.
And I wrote that in 2020. And it was more of my testimony, and it had the prayer section, but it didn't have like a journaling section, and it didn't talk about therapy and medicine as much either. And so I updated it. But Prayers, Progress, Deliverance LLC is going to be the brick and mortar of that book. And so I want to be able to help women and children with mental health resources. They can come in, they can get, the services they need, not necessarily medication. We may look into music therapy, bibliotherapy, a lot of Christian counseling, a lot of maybe alternative resources that if they, if medicine is not something, because a lot of people don't want to take medicine,
Right.
for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And so if they don't want to utilize medicine, that'll be fine. We'll have many other forms of resources for them to have access to.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
When I was pregnant with my son, my second child, had such a hard pregnancy.
Mm.
When he was born, I went through postpartum depression, but mine was postpartum rejection. I didn't want to hold my son,
Mm.
and it was for a couple of months afterwards because had to be on bed rest for 9 months. Threatened miscarriage. Those blood tests you have to take when you drink that
They don't do
it's
those
like
anymore. Thank
flat
God. For
black
the blood
soda
sugar.
way back then.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
back in the 80s.
Mhm.
For the
Mm.
blood sugar, you had to drink like flat soda.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they told me that I had failed my blood test like 2 or 3 times, and they told me that my son was going to be severely Down syndrome.
Oh my.
And the doctors were trying to talk me into aborting at 5 months.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I told them, no, whatever God gives me, that's what I'm going to deliver. Thank
Yeah.
God he wasn't Down syndrome. But my husband had to take off from the military, personal leave, to take care of him, the baby, because I couldn't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, hug him, comfort him, connect. It took a couple of months to connect with him.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
And I can fully relate to that story, honestly. With my second one, his father and I did not have a good relationship at all. And then again, like you said, they thought that he was going to have Down syndrome. And I can say, honestly, I love him now. We have a wonderful bond, but it took a long time to get there. I remember holding him and I would just see his dad, and it just messed me up. It took a lot to be able to really bond with him. So I completely sympathize with you, and you're amazing for being able to make it through that, and seeing the other side, because it is not an easy walk. And if you haven't experienced it, it's, you probably sound crazy to some people. I think that's a lot of the reason we don't talk about it, is because if it's not something you've gone through, then you don't get it. So
Right.
good for you.
Right. Thank you so much. What are some of the key insights that you provide in your book, 3 Parts of Healing, All Parts Whole? What kind of strategies do you offer for working through the PPD in your book?
I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that question. That's really good. So God is the foundation of the book. So if they're not a believer, it may not be of benefit to them. I don't know, but he is the foundation of the book. And then from there, I talk about therapy, about reaching out to your family, about reaching out to whoever you have that your support system. If you don't have a support system, go to a local shelter, a local doctor, a local church. Reach out to someone.
Yes.
That is a big thing. You have to reach out to somebody. You can't not reach out for someone and then expect to get help, and that's not to sound insensitive, but you have to reach out to somebody. And it's okay to reach out to somebody. 2020 really changed the game, I think, for mental health, and even mental health within the faith communities. There's a lot more conversations about it than there used to be, and it's not as stigmatized as it was. I mean, it's still stigmatized, you
Mhm.
know, but there is a lot more space now, I think, for someone to reach out and say, hey, this is what's happening. Especially now, like women, there's a rise of women, you know, in the world, in the church, like women are really rising up and taking their places. And so I think now for women who deal with mental health issues, you know, postpartum or otherwise, it's the perfect time to stand up and say, hey, I'm not okay, I need help. So that
Yes.
was is one of the most important things. And yeah, reaching out to your support system, not trying to do it alone, and prayer and scripture, of course, and therapy. Absolutely, therapy, counseling. You know, you can pray about your counselor. You can pray which counselor to go to. You can pray in the session if that's something that the counselor does. You know, like there's so much that can be done about it that women do not have to suffer.
I think one of the things that we I want for listeners to hear from us as well is sometimes people don't have a support system for whatever reason.
Right.
You move out of town for a job and you are pregnant, or you like, oh, I'm not getting pregnant. I'm too old for that. But uh, let's say I was 20 years younger.
Baby shower.
Well, but you're here, so you would make me the best baby shower. I know you would.
Aww.
I got
But
you.
yeah, I know you got me. But I like I don't have family. Well, you're not telling that
Oh,
you're
no,
not
no, no.
family. I'm talking blood family.
I'm gonna let you explain
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's
So
not
I
bring it up.
Unpack that.
no, I'm not trying. Okay, hold up.
I got you, buddy. I got you.
You are terrible. Um, I don't have blood family in Georgia. Ironically, I have apparently five sisters and a brother. But out of all that people, I
Okay.
know my brother, but he lives in California. I'm in Georgia. Out of my five sisters, I've met four, and one passed
Okay.
away. And the other three, I only have communication with one. So if I was to get pregnant, in a dream world, I'm just putting a scenario. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have you. I wouldn't have a support system. Other that was
Right.
family. Maybe friends, and I am a hermit. So again, if I didn't have you, I wouldn't have a support system. So where I was going with this is churches need to get involved when they
Yeah.
see um, pregnant women. And one of the things I was telling her the other day, one of the things this podcast has taught me is, when you say I've heard everything, and this podcast has taught me I have not. Yeah, I'm learning so much, and
No.
one of the things that I've learned is it's not only in the lives of a single mom, it's even on the mom that has three kids and it's married.
Right.
Because
Yep.
we interviewed someone that actually something I had never thought about. This mom had two, three kids, has a miscarriage, and she's married. Nobody thinks about her because she has the three other kids. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't think about she just had a loss.
Right.
And but even if she actually has a baby, and maybe she doesn't have family around, and her husband has to go to work, she has three kids at home and now a new baby. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. That is
Yeah.
a lot. So, or even if it's the first one, you don't know what you're doing. So, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or you have a second. You said 13 months apart. You're having a toddler and a newborn. God
Yeah.
bless you. I'm being real. So, because I remember, I Oh, I'm glad I was never there. I would not be here. And I would be Cruella de Vil with all this white coming out of my
Oh,
hair. But that's a whole another conversation. So my back to my point is, um, churches, when you see people who are, women who are pregnant, try to see, anybody can chip in and be okay. Do you need anything? Are you, your husband is working? Do you need somebody to take you to appointments?
Mm-hmm.
You already get birth, bring the casseroles,
Mm-hmm.
and
yeah.
you might not be, and you don't want to touch the baby because that's the baby, and probably some moms don't want to. But can you go do a load of
Mhm.
laundry for her,
Mm-hmm.
or
Absolutely.
clean the bathrooms, or take the other three kids out for ice cream so that she can have an hour to herself? I
Hmm.
remember when I was a teenager, my neighbor had a baby, and I really only wanted to play with the baby. But she didn't mind because my hour playing with the baby was her hour to take a shower.
Mm-hmm.
She would put the baby in the middle of the bed. I would lay next to the baby, play with the baby. I was watching, make sure the baby didn't fall out of the bed. I was having fun. The baby was having fun, but she had an opportunity to take a shower.
Hmm.
So, the community also needs to get involved, because if you're in a place where you don't have a support system, it's going to be hard for you to ask because you don't know who's willing or able. So, as a community, neighbors, as a church community, if we see women in our churches who are expecting, let's step in and do community, be with them,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
do you have everything? If you have everything you need, God bless you, and I'm not going to bother you. Unless you want me to. But if
Hmm.
you don't, let you know that I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
Yeah.
like you said,
I
even
think
just that hour. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say to your point about the shower, if they do have everything they need material wise, just a few minutes of just maybe some, time to read a book or just to go for a walk, just something to help them feel like themselves for, even if it's
right.
just for a little bit, like that's such a
Hmm.
big deal that people don't think about. So you
Yeah.
make a very great point.
Hmm.
Right. And I talked to someone a few weeks ago that shared their story with me. This is their first child. They had a hard
Hmm.
pregnancy. And after she had the baby, her church was not there for
Oh
her,
yeah.
was not
Oh,
there for her. And her husband also had something that happened to him around the same time. So it was a lot. But she said that they decided, someone in the church, and it was a woman, told her, "You're not the only one that's ever had a baby."
Yeah. When they
oh
reach out to
my.
seek support,
Yeah.
that was the response.
You're not the only one that's ever had a baby. I
Terrible.
mean, women have babies every day. Okay, you lost them.
Mhm.
You lost
Yeah,
two.
that's it. Now you misrepresented Jesus so
Yeah,
bad in that
yeah.
moment. That's
And they
terrible. You could have
left.
turned them off for God for the rest of their
Yeah,
lives.
Mhm.
yeah. They
That's
left that
big.
ministry because she said for someone,
Wow.
especially a woman,
Mm.
to say that to you, whether you've had a child or not, she
Yeah.
couldn't believe that that was being said. So,
Yeah.
churches may have to remember what they're there for.
Mhm.
They
Absolutely.
need to
Absolutely. And I
remember
often,
that they're there to serve the congregation.
Right.
And serve could
yeah,
mean being with you after you have a baby and you're going through postpartum, being with you after
absolutely.
you've had a miscarriage, you're going through postpartum, or you're just trying to figure out how your life's going to go on without your baby. And
Yeah.
they should, you're a pregnant woman in church, team up somebody with them,
That's yeah.
just have a group for them. If they don't need you or want you or whatever, fine, but just know that we're here for you.
You know how cool would it be
Hmm.
to have this ministry of grandmas
Mm,
to do that kind of stuff?
yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
know sometimes, like, oh, my mom would have loved a ministry like that, even though she didn't like serving at church, but she would have, because my nieces were states apart. Like, we lived in Puerto Rico and then we lived in Georgia, but my brother was always either in Maine or California. So we saw the kids when they came over, but it was not on all the time. My mom had a ministry where she could
Mhm.
go and help women with new babies and be a grandma to those babies. Oh my God, she would have been over the moon.
Yeah.
And it gives purpose to both sides.
Mhm.
I'm a new mom, but now I'm getting information from an experienced mom
Mhm.
who's gonna baby is gonna be
Mhm.
okay. The baby's not gonna die if he's crying too much.
Mhm.
Those kind of things. Um,
Yeah.
but also giving the grandma the whole giving the love to child. All that would be great idea.
That'd be awesome. They had a grandma ministry,
Just
Absolutely.
for
and that would be
Yeah.
specifically for women
for women
pregnant,
pregnant,
having children,
right?
having problems after having children.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Whoever's listening to us,
Yeah,
go
that
to
would be
research and
wonderful.
implement
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Or in addition to, so like they have doula training where you can
Oh
become a
yeah.
Yes.
doula for postpartum. So each church could have at least one or two doulas to help with their
Mhm.
expectant mothers as well. That would be
Hmm.
wonderful. We might
It
be
Yeah.
would
onto
be
something,
wonderful
ladies.
because we found out that a doula
Uh-huh.
works from the stomach up, the mental part, and then the midwife
Mhm.
works from the stomach down.
The delivery
And
part.
that just blew my mind right there because I'm trying to figure out what's the difference in a doula and a midwife. And when she says a doula works from the stomach up to encourage the mother
Mhm.
to be there for her while she's going through it, and then the midwife takes care of the lower part.
I'm gonna brag on my niece.
Yeah.
My niece is a doula, and she has her own two
Aw.
kids.
Mhm.
Yes, and
Aw.
I see. I mean, obviously, she respects the privacy of her patients or the people she's with. But
Mhm.
I see her post about, I'm helping a new mom, or I'm cooking for a new mom. Like, after the mom has the baby, she cooks for them. She goes over there. She does all those things for them. She is trained in pregnancy yoga, stuff like
Mm.
that. So I'm sure while doing the pregnancy, she probably does some of that too, for stretching and
Uh-huh.
whatnot. And I'm very proud of her for that, because that takes a unique person to do.
Yeah.
You have your own household. She has a
Mhm.
husband, two kids, and then she takes and cooks not only for her family, but she cooks for this new family that she's working with, and taking care of that mom. I think that's a ministry right there.
Definitely.
That's a ministry.
That's definitely a minute.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
You can't just take somebody
Absolutely.
out the street to do that.
Oh no,
Mm-mm.
you don't want to either,
Mm-mm.
because not
No.
everybody can deal with
Mm.
Right.
with those emotions and all of that stuff.
Right. What
Exactly.
advice would
Yep.
you give new parents who might be experiencing the PPD symptoms or other mental health challenges?
Hold on. That would be my
What
first.
would you give
My first.
the
My first
advice
piece of
to the new
advice would be
parents?
hold on.
Hmm.
Oh, that's the advice. Hold on.
I love it.
That would be my first piece. Hold on.
I love it.
You can make it. You can make it. Hold
Yeah.
on.
And
And
it's going to
then
be all right.
to reach out
Hmm.
for help.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. There is a light at the end of the cave. There
Hmm.
is help there. Reach out for help. Don't be ashamed. You didn't do anything wrong. Especially as mothers, we feel like, if something doesn't go right, something happens to our kids, we automatically take that on as our own fault. You
Yeah.
know, it's not anything that you did. You are not alone, and it will get better. There is hope. God is a healer.
Hmm.
He wastes nothing. There's nothing that you'll go through that he will not take and use it for his glory. So
Absolutely.
hold
Hmm.
on, seek help, and remember that he is faithful.
Hmm. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Right.
You going?
What are some of the misconceptions about postpartum that you have heard of? And how do we address them?
I think the biggest one that I have heard is that if a woman has postpartum, she's automatically going to hurt her kids
Hmm.
or herself. That seems to be a common one. I think people, a lot of people, and it's okay, it's not like it's something that's talked about much, or it's not taught everywhere. So it makes sense that a lot of people don't know, but there's like five different conditions, and so I think gauging, finding out where the person is a big deal. But yeah, that seems to be one of the most common ones, and that it's just extended baby blues.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times people who again are not knowledgeable, which is not their fault,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's baby blues just going longer. They don't understand that it's actually a medical condition, that it's not the baby blues, and that it's going to require a different set of tools and strategies to overcome it.
Exactly. Do you have any success stories of your coaching or advocacy work that stands out that you can share?
you know i, I have a couple. I've helped, like I said, I volunteered with PSI, Postpartum Support International. So I've
Hmm.
talked with women, when they're looking for resources, and they had a specific position where you could be like the liaison for the person looking for resources, the go between them and the doctor, because if the doctors are not trained to deal with those things, right? Like they're trained to deal with the body and what's happening to it. They're not trained with the mind, and so a lot of times they'll reach out to people from PSI to get the resources that they need to give to their patients. And so I've helped a lot of girls in that way. But I think thus far, the most significant thing that stands out to me is in my own life. And I don't say that to make it about me or to toot my own horn or anything like that, because it's God, it's all God. But I got to speak last year to a group of girls, a group of teenage moms about postpartum, 45 minutes from where my journey began.
Mm.
Mm.
And so it was just a full circle moment for me, just to the testimony and the goodness of God and what he can do with your story, if you give it to him.
Absolutely.
Awesome. 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 Balancing your roles as a mother, an advocate, an entrepreneur must be very challenging. Are there any strategies or routines that have helped you maintain that balance?
No.
Other than your faith.
Other than saying Jesus every
You
5 seconds.
know what? No, I'm not just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's how I do. I scream
No,
Jesus every five
honestly,
seconds.
it's a process. I think it's always a process. Life is always changing. The one constant is change. I have learned for me though, kind of planning ahead works, even if it's only just a day ahead. Also, time chunking. I'll work on this for an hour, and I'll work on that for an hour. And my kids are older now, so it's nothing for them to go and hang out with their friends or watch some TikTok or do some TikTok while I'm in my room working on my computer or writing or at work. Because during the school year, I'm a paraprofessional. My other passion is kids. I love pouring into kids and ministering to them, and so my kids are very great about understanding the different roles and what I'm trying to achieve. At least I think so. I hope so. It seems like they are.
Hmm.
And so yeah, just planning ahead a little bit. Time chunking, is a really big deal. I can be a little bit stubborn. Like I'm sure God's up there, like, girl, if you don't turn that TV off, and start writing already. Like, but yeah, just and just prioritizing and realizing that if the kids eat frozen pizza once or twice a week, it may not kill them. You know, like, you're one person. You have grace for so much in the day, and when that grace is exhausted, then it's time to go to bed. You're done, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Looking
I actually got
ahead,
that from Dr. Anita Phillips.
from who?
Dr. Anita Phillips, do you know who she
Oh,
is?
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she said that on one of her podcasts. So I want to take credit for that. That was all her. She said, you have grace. You have a certain amount of grace for each day's works. When your grace is done for the day, then you're done.
Mhm.
There you go.
Mhm.
That's very good. Looking ahead, how do you see when you dream about prayers, progress, and deliverance? How do you see that project impacting the community through what it's gonna be?
I see change, ministry, hope. It's going to be, brick and mortar, and it's going to be a place where women can come to be filled, to be refreshed, to be heard, to be supported. It's going to put revenue back into the community. Where
Mhm.
I live, it's a wonderful community, but it seems to be a little poverty stricken.
Mhm.
Of course, much of the world does right now, right? But
Mhm.
I want to be able to give back in that way, and to be able to provide resources. Specifically, a while back, I had an idea that God recently just brought back to me. I think while we've been on this podcast, about putting baskets together full of things that women would need postpartum, and
Mhm.
giving that to the community, or to the hospitals, to the pregnancy clinics, and yeah, just being a resource and a voice for the women who need it, and children.
Right.
Can't forget the
Mhm.
children, the next generation. I have
Mhm.
a son who has diagnosis, and so that's something that's very passionate to me too. Is working with children who have mental health disorders, and
Mhm.
just this new generation in general. They're different, and they have their own language, and but they're awesome, and I love them, and I think that they are destined for so much greatness,
Oh, yeah.
that they just need somebody to help, pour into them. And I just want to do my part in that.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, Miss Amber, we thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insight with us today. Your work is truly inspiring and it offers hope to so many. And we appreciate you.
Well, God bless y'all. Thank you so much for having me today. It's been an honor to be here with you, and to hear your laughs, and it's such a wonderful vibe and peaceful feeling. So thank you.
To our listeners, you can find Amber's book, Three Parts of Healing, All Parts Whole, and learn more about prayers, progress, and deliverance with the links in the description. If you're listening to us on the radio, you can go to Amazon to find it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Thrive by the Rising Muse on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on social medias for update, behind the scenes content, and more inspiring stories.
Remember, if you or someone you know is in a crisis situation, they can call 988. If your loved one is in a crisis situation, you can dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room. We want everybody to be safe.
Thank you for joining us today. And until next time,
Don't
don't
forget
forget
to
to
thrive.
thrive.
Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.